Have you ever been so worried that a show is gonna mess with your favorite character and you just have to talk about it? That's why I'm here. I'm Jade, and today I want to talk about Hazbin Hotel, specifically a lot of Season 2 and a lot of clips about Vox, and a concern I have about Vox possibly working towards redemption. I see a lot of videos on YouTube when I'm just scrolling through about how Alistair is probably going to be a character that can't get redeemed, and possibly the only character who can't get redeemed, even though other characters who are bad have expressed wanting to be better or thrown out the concept of redemption or something, and I'm gonna get into that. Trust me, that's what this whole video is gonna be on, but I want to throw out the idea that some characters, even if they are possibly redeemable, shouldn't be redeemed, including Vox. So that's gonna be the discussion today, and I'm really excited to get into this one. Start off, I really love villains. I love villains with good redemption arcs. I love villains who turn out to not be as bad as they seem as you go along and watch the show and get more into them. I love all flavors of complicated villains, and I think that layered villains are the best villains. I think villains are more interesting than heroes. But I think a villain can be layered without working towards a full-on redemption in the way that Hazbin Hotel introduces the concept of redemption. Hazbin takes redemption to a whole new level, because it's not just, oh, you're a better person now. It's, oh, you're a better person now, and you're going to heaven, which is a completely different sphere of existence with different rules in hell and different guiding principles and motivations and everything to it. And again, I'll be getting into all of this. So when someone is redeemed in Hazbin Hotel, it's not just, oh, they have layers, or oh, they're a better character. It is, they have to go through a fundamental change, reckon for their sins, or do something that actually makes them better, or repent, or really fit more into the heaven sphere than the hell sphere. And I don't really think that's for everyone. So where am I coming from? In Hazbin Hotel Season 2, Vox goes to Charlie and makes a mess of the hotel and basically forces Charlie to try to redeem his soul on the spot, and after basically having Charlie revoke his invitation to the hotel and revoke his stay there to watch his soul be redeemed and get his interview on redemption, he turns to Charlie and asks her,
"Do you think I could be redeemed?"
Charlie says,
"I believe anyone can be redeemed."
And Vox makes a face. And that's a huge point of contention for me. I'm going to be talking about it a lot later. And then he basically deflects and leave as if it hadn't happened. And then it never really comes up again. He doesn't bring this idea of getting redeemed up again. He doesn't talk about it with Velvet. In fact, they leave the hotel and just laugh hysterically at the whole concept of the hotel. But that face, yes, that face makes me think that he is considering the concept of redemption. And I have a huge problem with this because I feel like it conflicts with everything about his character, his values, his interests, and everything that makes Vox Vox. While we don't get much characterization for Vox in Season 1, he is central to Season 2. There are definitely times where you see how Vox is portrayed. He's kind of a joke villain. He's arrogant, he's pretentious, and he doesn't really grasp how he's affecting others. And a lot of times it's played for laughs, and sometimes it's more serious, but the times it's played for laughs, I think is just so genuinely Vox. And I'm gonna call a few of those out here. There's the time where Vox gifts the hotel a 150-inch screen Vox Tech TV, which just breaks a wall, and he says you're welcome as if it's like he did them a favor and doesn't realize that he just destroyed a wall, and this isn't really something they're excited about. He has Valentino and Velvet come to a meeting, and he had told Valentino to come alone, but he brought one of his sinners with him, and so Vox feeds that sinner to Shockwave.
Hey, I was using that!
And then there's the time he teleports to a fight with Alistair, and when he appears, he blows up a sinner and is just incredibly nonchalant about the whole thing. And then he has a party where he's trying to bolster his approval ratings to get up to 100% to lead his attack on Heaven, and he spends the time there showing Charlie a compilation of all the times he's upset her and made her cry, and he is enjoying it. Look how much he's laughing. This is like enjoyment to him. This is his entertainment. He loves this. And not only does he love it, but he doesn't seem to notice how upset she is and how much she's not in on the joke. He is just completely oblivious to that moment. And these aren't even the only moments. While those scenes showcase some of the more harmless, played for laughs things that he does, and they are not really to be taken entirely seriously. Some of them are just throwaway gags. We do get actual insight into his deviousness and how little he actually cares for others, and the things he finds fun, and the things that motivate him in a lot more serious instances that cause actual harm to the main cast. There's the time where he cut the brakes on a train and put Husk's life at risk. And he did this for fun. And if you notice, when he says that he did this, Velvet actually looks up and pays attention to the fact that Vox just did something that they both find entertaining. Meanwhile, everyone in the hotel is panicking and freaking out because they actually care about Husk, whereas Vox is trying to hurt him. During the scene up there, Vox has lines where he is literally insinuating that he would find it fun to torture everyone who ever doubted him.
And once we're gods, I can't wait to say to everyone who doubted me, your doubting days are done. You'll be cornered, trapped, and tortured, then I'll end you just for fun.
Near the end of the season, he asks Valentino for a favor regarding borrowing angel dust, and then there's the last instance where after he nearly destroys Hell with his weapon, he is more concerned about his approval ratings and his perception and uses that to deflect from what he caused instead of saying anything along the lines of, "I think I messed up." In my mind, this shows that his real concern are his approval ratings and how he's being perceived and how he can come back from this rather than any of the harm he has caused. And the thing is, this is like the character. This is a lot of what we see about this character. This is basically a summation of the character. These clips here that I've talked about are all just instances of Vox being Vox. It is how the show portrays him, and it is pretty consistent. His approval ratings matter, being on top matters. Vox only really cares about himself, and even other characters comment on such. This desire for growth and being on the top and caring about his approval ratings and caring about being the strongest and the baddest, this isn't just something that he's embodying because he's in Hell now. It is something that has followed him throughout his life. Back on Earth, when he was a nobody, he was a weatherman. That's how he started out his career. And then he became an anchorman, then he became a producer, and then he became the head of a network, leading basically a cult or a movement of people he was bringing together and surrounding under his vision. And he specifically says he loves being a god, and having that godlike power is the most important thing to him, and he'll get there no matter what it takes. This is a pivotal cornerstone of Vox's character. This is what he is like, and this is what he cares about. Being on top, feeling like he's at the top, and when he's at the bottom, working his way to the top. And yes, when he was in Hell, when he was just new to Hell, he did seem a little more humble. He asked Alistair to partner with him, and he seemed to even express respect for Alistair, which Alistair is remembered to this day that Vox once showed respect for him. But I have a really hard time reconciling this against Vox's opportunistic nature, which again, we saw throughout his human flashback, where he was working his way to the top. He started as a weatherman and used his charisma and his killer instinct to get himself to the top. And I have no doubt that he's not planning to do that in Hell, but originally went to Alistair, that fell through, so he made partnerships with the V's and worked his way to the top. Possibly in a different way than he would have if he had partnered with Alistair, but still worked his way to the top and had a very successful company, and so high on the top of his game that there's even a line about it in Stayed Gone where he is expressing that everyone has already switched to watching him on video at this point, and that video is the predominant medium in Hell.
While he hid in radio, we pivoted to video. Now his medium is getting bloody rare.
And yes, okay, fine. It might have been Alistair's rejection of Vox that made Vox more vengeful towards him and led some of this rivalry and some of this motivation for Vox and made Vox have a certain weakness for taking Alistair down, but his drive to be the most powerful force was basically what he went to Alistair for, a partnership between video and television. And furthermore, once he got to the top in Hell and had the V's and had this powerful Vox Tech brand, then he set his eyes on heaven. It's just who he is. And I don't feel like that's just he's in Hell and now he's humble. I think he was definitely working towards this the entire time and trying to choose the right partnership for it. Again, when it fell through with Alistair, that's when it worked with Valentino and Velvet. Heaven is nice, like genuinely nice. Everyone is nice. There are no drugs. To quote Emily,
no one here's addicted to crack.
On top of that, their hobbies are discotheque, unicorn polo, and rom-com Christmas movies all year round at the multiplex. Charlie loved Heaven because she got to go to the zoo and see an actual koala, and Vox's face when she's telling him about that koala basically says it all and says what his perspective on this is. Fox's version of entertainment is taking the brakes off trains and sensationalizing news that makes Charlie look like a dictator. These things just don't really go together all that well because Vox doesn't really fit into the Heaven mold. Do I think Vox is going to be the show's big main bad and no one's going to surpass him? Absolutely not. Fox is obviously going to be the season 2 joke villain. Something's going to come up that's even worse, and he's not even going to register as a villain after a while. But he is a bad guy, and his values align with hell. He thrives there. He thrives in this world where the overlords make the rules, and he can do the things he loves there that he wouldn't be able to do in heaven, where there are rules and different sorts of hobbies and different sorts of entertainment. But the thing is, I think that's okay. I don't think heaven should be the goal for everyone. I don't think it should be the goal for Vox. I don't think it should be a goal for anyone who thrives in hell and loves hell. I guess if like Cherry Bomb went to heaven, she'd be happy because she has Pentious, but she likes her turf wars and she likes her destruction. She likes the clubs she goes to. And heaven can't even conceive of having a drink after a hard day because everything's great because it's heaven, but it's just not really compatible with some of these characters who like fighting and doing all the activities we see throughout the show, including just look at some of the background stuff in Happy Day in Hell. The thing is, some of these sinners enjoy hell because they're in a place where they can do what they enjoy, which is subjugating others or manipulating others or partaking in activities that aren't actually considered heaven worthy. But that isn't a bad thing when you're faced with a dichotomy that is a certain view of heaven and then this idea of lawlessness and oppositeness that is hell.
Well, hello there, you wayward sinner. Do you like blood, violence, and depravity of a sexual nature? Of course you do! That's why you're in hell!
And so I don't think it's right to say every character's goal should be redemption and should be heaven, because some characters really belong in hell and love being there and love taking advantage of the fact that they're there. Just look at how Alistair goes above and beyond in his fight when he's protecting the hotel from the loan sharks that Mimsy brought. Again, I know Alistair's probably not the best example because he's probably irredeemable because he wants to continue his fun and loves hell. But look at Velvet, who has a whole song, Respectless, about how she doesn't care that she is a really bad person. So what do I think should be done with Vox's question to Charlie and her answer to him? I think that in season 3, when he has his eventual complete fall from power and is at the absolute bottom and just needs somewhere to go and has lost everything, he should realize the hotel is open to him. That's the low-hanging fruit. He has a place there and it's the last place he's got and it's the only place on his list at this point. The show has already set this concept up in a really interesting throwaway deal made in like season 1, episode 1, where Vaggie asks Alistair to make a video for him and they have a deal where Alistair says, sure, I'll help you make this commercial, but then I am never going to engage with this frivolous technology again, referring to video. This opens a door for them to need someone else who can do that in the future because they can't turn to the one overlord who can make the dream happen because Alistair's tapped out of it. So that opens a door for Vox to come in and pick up that role. So that is a low-hanging fruit and the really obvious way that Vox can go there and do something good. But again, he's a villain, so I think he should stay a villain, but he can still do good. We're talking about layered villains here. But I also think his presence at the hotel should serve as a lesson for Charlie. I think it should make Charlie face her belief that everyone can be redeemed and really zero in on that. And I think the strongest character growth would come out of her realizing that, yes, while it is technically possible for anyone to change and be redeemed and to want to be better and eventually want to be the best version of themselves possible and go to heaven, while that is technically possible for everyone, some souls are just better in hell and have interests that are more focused around hell. And I think that this whole arc with Vox being at the hotel can do two really interesting things for Charlie and the hotel. Firstly, I think it would make Charlie face her naivety in Happy Day in Hell. She believes that if any soul is given a place at the hotel, they will take this opportunity and change and work towards redemption and want to be redeemed. I think that this is going to be, like I said, the time when she realizes that anyone can be, but not everyone wants to be. And in fact, she's had a soul in her hotel since the pilot, Alistair, who's been helping her out with running the hotel and helping her out with protecting the hotel and fighting for the hotel, but he doesn't actually have any goals or interest about being redeemed, and Vaggie even knows as much and calls him out on it by saying it's not going to be interesting if no one's there and he's working in an empty hotel to laugh at their failure. So everyone kind of knows Alistair has no interest in the hotel, but he's there. So to Charlie, this should be the moment where she realizes, yes, any soul can change, but some shouldn't or might not want to, and that she kind of has to accept that her hotel is a place for those who are willing and interested and actually kind of in a way already on that path to trying to be better. Secondly, I think it would allow for the hotel to rebrand. Think about it. Charlie originally started the hotel to save souls from extermination. She started the hotel because exorcists were coming down and exterminating souls. And so Charlie figured that with this hotel, souls could work towards redemption and save themselves from extermination. That was how they tried to market it in the first episode.
So, what do you think?
It didn't explain anything about how we're trying to save demons from extermination, which is the whole fucking point.
But by this point in the show, the exorcists seem to be a second thought. They're kind of on the back burner. Seraphim, who ordered the exorcist army to go down and exterminate souls, has had a reckoning and realized she regrets doing this and wants to work towards peace, and in fact made for a peaceful resolution to end Vox's war. Because the exorcists have stopped coming down in an organized fashion to exterminate souls, or at this point I believe they have unless Luke goes rogue, it seems like the exorcist army is not really going to be a fighting force. Additionally, heaven is starting to accept redeemed souls and actually has a huge welcome banner for them by the end of the season. So at this point the hotel is no longer there to stop souls from being exterminated and to protect them from being exterminated. The hotel exists as a place to be vice free and have an easier shot at being a better person because you're removed from all the stuff that makes hell really bad, and you can work towards it for what Charlie even calls the right reasons, wanting to be redeemed. And like I said, Vox is the one who can get that message out there, since Alistair certainly won't. And part of me also kind of hopes it goes in this direction, because I think it would be really funny to see Vox sensationalizing this coverage into some sort of reality show about redemption. And additionally, at the end of season 2, it seems like Alistair's hanging around the hotel more to mess with Lucifer than he is to actually help at the hotel. He's doing it for fun now that he's unbound from his deal. So it seems like Vox really needs to take the more active role in supporting the hotel, or at least someone needs to step up. That might fall to Vaggie, because she did it throughout season 2, but hey, maybe Vox will actually do something good for the hotel, like Alistair was doing when he was protecting it throughout seasons 1 and 2, or predominantly season 1, I should say. But it seems like an opportunity for some of these sinners and overlords who are there and helping out around the hotel to help and improve it and get word out there about it, while not necessarily working towards redemption for themselves, because maybe for some of them it doesn't make sense. For Vox, I think he'd have some benefits of being at the hotel as well. For one, I think he'd be able to reinvent himself and his brand. We know that Vox likes to become powerful, that he loves power. I don't think this should change. It's been a cornerstone of his personality. Maybe he really wants to change and get better, but let's face it, that would be less Vox. I could rather see himself changing in a way that makes him a little less evil. I could see him still sensationalizing news and having fun and still making his jokes and terrible things that don't really show a high degree of empathy. But I could also still see him kind of becoming a little more aware of his actions and a little more aware of his brand and a little more discerning about the deals he makes. Maybe in an ideal world, he even takes Alistair's advice and doesn't make any deals this time and rebuilds his brand on his own as his own solo Vox Tech thing to compete against Val in season 3, because it seems like Val has taken over Vox Tech. So I think there's opportunity for Vox to grow his brand and change how he's presented himself and change how he's presented his brand and grow in a different way where he's using the news a little differently and using his interests a little differently and using any deals he's making a little differently and still being opportunistic, but maybe a little less hurtful, or maybe starting to develop a few closer relationships with people than he otherwise would have. I find it interesting that throughout season 1 and 2, we didn't really actually see anyone he has a soul deal with or any sort of deal with except for Alistair. So I'd be curious to learn more about anything that's been part of his territory that he lost and anything he's going to work towards in the future and how he's going to rebuild himself now. But I don't think he should just roll over and take this and be like, no, I'm going to work towards redemption. I think that this is a better opportunity for us to see how he became powerful in the first place, but also see a lens of growth and layered character building for Vox throughout this process. And I think this growth would be really organic for Vox after everything he went through. While I don't feel like the V's have fully betrayed him yet, perhaps in season 3 my mood will change on that, and it'll make a lot of sense that he is rebuilding from the ground up and being a little more discerning and being a little more aware and caring a little more about the people around him and the deals he's making and the ways he's approaching power. I still think he'll have a sense of humor, and I still think he'll do things that are just really asinine and mean, but maybe he'll refrain from mocking people so ruthlessly, like how he was so gung-ho about insulting Charlie or her hotel and got kicked out and just didn't even take any ownership of that. Maybe he'll take ownership of a few things, but I really think that he can grow in this layered way and become better without becoming heaven-worthy. And I think that's an important distinction because Vox's brand and the way he sensationalizes news and the way he sensationalizes stories and cares about certain headlines, for instance, is what enables him to be powerful. And like I said, he wasn't happy as a human. He had to keep growing. He wasn't happy with just hell when he had all of hell. He had to have heaven as well. And maybe this time he will find a brand that he is satisfied with and happy with, but I don't think he's going to be making feels-good, happy movies up in heaven. I have a feeling that he's still going to be more geared towards hell, and again, I think that's okay. A character in Hazbin Hotel, it's so black or white. They're either in hell or they're in heaven, and heaven has a certain set of values, like I said. And I just really have a hard time believing that Vox's values will ever align thoroughly enough with heaven to justify a straight up go up to heaven, ascend to heaven redemption arc for that character. Honestly, in my ideal world, Vox's rebrand will allow him to be a very strong solo act and have a good solo news station. And he's basically followed Alistair's advice like he always follows whatever Alistair says. Alistair has a lot of effect and influence on Vox. So I could see Vox really building himself up on his own, and eventually Alistair having this reckoning about being alone, and maybe part of him being alone and being what he was and being this top overlord, maybe part of his attitude in rejecting Vox and saying that he couldn't be his friend had something to deal with his deal with Rosie, and so he was more focused on that than character growth and making any friends. But it would be really cool to see these two come together into that basically faded media brand that Vox originally proposed, and I would love to see it this time be Alistair coming to Vox and requesting that partnership, and that growth being something that's happened on both their parts, where Vox has learned to work alone and in a team, and Alistair has now come around to the idea of working in a team, and it brings them together, and they're the strongest brand in hell. Again, their news doesn't always have to be terrible. They don't always have to be killing and destroying and basically making lives miserable, but they can work together to have the strongest media brand in hell. And I think that's the rub, that it's just not all about heaven, and I don't think heaven is the ideal situation for every character. I think there are ways that characters can thrive and be successful and even happy in hell. And the idea that we're sitting here on the internet having discourse about who should be redeemed, who can be redeemed, what's it mean to be redeemed, and oh, these characters look like they're barred from redemption. I don't think that's the point. I think that it's all very black and white, and I think that we're gonna see that change in the future. Hazbin Hotel really has to move forward in a way that establishes that heaven and hell are mindsets. Now that the exorcisms aren't really a thing and the hotel's not saving souls from extermination anymore, it's porting souls on a personal growth to figure out, do they belong in hell, do they belong in heaven? I feel like heaven is a mindset. You don't have to be at the hotel to redeem yourself. You can still be a good person anywhere in hell and eventually work towards your own redemption. The hotel works or helps because there are no vices there, or it's at least very medium vices. They still get to drink and stuff, but it's not as bad as it would be out in the throes of hell where there's just rampant violence on the streets every single day. So I think that heaven is the mindset of, I want peace, I want joy, I want rom-com Christmas movies all year round, I want to enjoy that. That's when you work towards heaven, because that's what aligns more with your interests, your wants, your desires, and you feel like you're misplaced by going down to hell. You have something you really feel bad about and you want to get redeemed. That's what I think heaven is. It's where you go if you really don't belong in hell. If you think about it, Pentious was already halfway to redemption when he got down to hell. He regretted till the day he died, he regretted not outing Jack the Ripper. That's why he was in hell, is because he maintained his silence. So he came clean and was able to repent for that sin, that he carried that regret with him forever. Those are the type of characters who are meant for heaven. Characters who genuinely care about being better. I can make the case for Angel Dust as well. And I'm not even going to make this video into a whole retrospective on now on Angel Dust's character and what was his crime and his sin and why is he in hell. I don't feel like that's important so much as saying Angel Dust has a character arc where he doesn't enjoy hell and he's a lowlife, and that's why he's employed by Val, who even says those are the types of characters he employs. And Angel Dust seems like he's depressed and just not enjoying his experience in hell and would do better in heaven. So I think that heaven is more of a mindset, and so is hell. Hell works for those overlords who like the power, who like the strength, who like to subjugate, who like to spin information, who would be bored out of their minds in a place where they can't get, what was it Sir Pentious was looking for? Enriched uranium? And things to invent terrible war machines? Those characters who enjoy turf wars or enjoy drugs and enjoy terrible actions and drinking and everything else they're enjoying and power do not belong up there. They belong in hell, and these are two competing mindsets, and I think they're opposite. And I think that that's supposed to be the case, at least right now, and I think that that is how they are deciding which character goes where and which character belongs where. So anyway, when I see Vox's face, when Charlie tells him she believes everyone can be redeemed, I really hope this is more just to lead him to the hotel and lead him to this reckoning and character growth, as opposed to a full straight up redemption that would require him to change from the ground up and basically undo everything that Vox is. I honestly think he would have to be completely unrecognizable as a character to be redeemable. All his interests, his motivations, and everything he finds fun would have to change. Vox can't be Vox and be in heaven. He'd have to go back to this kind of humble, subservient version of himself when he first came down to hell, but he first came down to hell and proposed a way to become powerful. This is what Vox is. He loves power, and it's not unique to him. There are so many souls like him, and even Val, who has a moment where he's scared that Vox won't notice him anymore because he likes Vox, and there's a good facet to this otherwise terrible character. He doesn't belong in heaven either just because he has one redeemable quality or one good quality. One good action isn't enough for heaven. It's a mindset. It's a place you go when that is what you are and what you enjoy. But hey, Sir Pentious is in heaven and he's lonely and he's miserable, and he gets a little more okay with it when he gets his heaven version of the egg boys that he can, at least in his words, tolerate. But he's still lonely all the way up until he makes his broadcast and gets to see his friends and cherry bomb again. So even heaven isn't perfect. And honestly, we've even seen that heaven is corrupt, and that has happened in the form of seeing the decision to make Exorcist and the regret Seraphim feels, and her not even knowing the very simple fact that it is okay to apologize and to understand the human emotion of fear, both things that Sir Pentious had to teach her about, because heaven doesn't have the full understanding of souls, and they don't even understand judgment, but that's a whole nother discussion. So while the angel Lute might have believed that angels can't make mistakes, Seraphim did make mistakes, and she has regrets. And some characters who are seen as infallible have been presented as fallible, and some characters who have been presented as all bad have made some good decisions here and there. But I really think that in the future, the best situation is that we would see this yin and yang where heaven and hell both have their good and their bad, and good and bad things happening in them. I think that this yin and yang might allow there to be a kind of collapse of this whole dichotomy between heaven and hell, where these two realms kind of come together in such a way that's more of a choice of where do you want to be, and maybe there's more free travel between them in the future, and this whole thing is totally irrelevant and just a rant I am making to rant about Hazbin Hotel and redeeming certain characters and what makes sense. But I think it's really more about the journey of these characters, and redemption is probably not going to stay as black and white as it has currently been presented. So anyway, yes, I would love to see some version of Vox where he looks redeemed, but you know, I love the fan art, love all of it, but I don't think it belongs in the canon, unfortunately. And I think that's gonna go for a few characters, and I think we should enjoy speculating, having fun, and talking about these characters and loving these characters, but we also have to love them for who they are and what's been established. Otherwise, who are these characters really? So I hope you don't mind me ranting about Vox here and justifying why I don't believe he's heaven bound, or why I hope he's not heaven bound, and the changes we'd have to see in his character for him to be heaven bound. But this is just a really long-winded way of me saying I love the show, love the characters, and love Vox, and really hope he doesn't change too much. Thanks for watching!